Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Dr. Chris Featherstone once again here for another episode of the Legion of Raw with my man. Always a pleasure to do this show with this guy here. He is SK Wrestling's own Greg Bush. How are you tonight, sir?
Doing well, Chris. How about you?
Been good, man. Doing well. So Vinny Rue, he has some eye issues going on. He's so prayers are going out with for Vince Russo and a speedy recovery. He'll be back next week. But it's always good to chat Raw with Greg Bush, man. So we're heading into a couple interesting events. We're heading into the Vengeance Day NXT, right? And we're also heading into, as we found out today, the Elimination Chamber, which the Elimination Chamber match is set in stone. We actually started off Raw with Shane O'Mac coming back, and he basically had a moment with the official Adam Pearce, and it was really weird because Shane McMahon actually Adam Pearce was out in the ring. It started off with Adam Pearce in the ring. He introduces Shane McMahon. Shane McMahon, the only thing that he does is literally just say, "Hey, you're doing a good job, Adam Pearce." And then they're announcing the 6 people. Last week we're kind of going with the Drew and Sheamus route, the 101, and then all of a sudden, boom. He's going to defend his title against 5 other people. They're trying to throw a gimmick that they're all former champions. Ooh. So you had The Miz, you had AJ Styles, you had Jeff Hardy out anywhere. They're really pulling there. And they had Sheamus and another one. I don't even remember who it was. It was Sheamus.
Randy.
Orton, yeah, that's the other one. Orton, yeah. And so, I mean, out of all this, out of Drew beating Randy Orton, out of AJ Styles somehow out of nowhere, I mean, he's had a pretty decent streak on Raw, but out of anything, you actually have Drew McIntyre instead of the road to WrestleMania. Now, there's been times where Elimination Chamber has been changed. The title's been changed to Elimination Chamber. But I kind of think you're kind of defeating the purpose of Drew having the road to WrestleMania, because at the end of the day, it's like, one, is Drew McIntyre really going to lose the match at Elimination Chamber? And if he does, you beat Goldberg. You know what I mean? You just beat Goldberg on the Royal Rumble, but somehow you're not going to beat the 5 other people in Elimination Chamber. I don't know about this booking call. What do you think, Greg?
Well, first off, so Shane was a surprise, wasn't he? Like
he was a surprise, and it was just, the only thing that he did was good job, Adam Pearce. And so the first thing I thought was, come on now, is this really going to set up some type of Shane McMahon versus Adam Pearce WrestleMania match or something like that? Like, I could see that happening. I could see that happening.
Don't speak that into existence, man, because now it's going to happen.
I can see that happening, man.
This is kind of where I would like qualifiers, at least. Mm-hmm. Like, when you do the chamber and you just say, here they are, it kind of takes away some of the fun of it. But also, like you said, like Jeff Hardy was a champion in 2009?
Yeah.
And he hasn't really done great in the past year or two.
He's like won like 2 or 3 matches since he came to the Raw roster, like the past few months.
Elias and
and Riker. No, he's lost against Riker. Really against Elias. I think he's the only person he beat.
Like, why? I understand the world champion thing, but you don't really have the guys there right now to make that work. Like, why isn't Bobby Lashley in this?
Right.
Why isn't Keith Lee? Like, just like guys that are currently wrecking. Like, why are they not a part of this?
Yeah, I agree. It just kind of seems as if they just really threw this together. This feels thrown together. I would much rather have seen, first of all, Kofi Kingston was a former champion.
Yeah.
I'd rather see Kofi Kingston in there than Jeff Hardy. To me, as a fan, I would be more intrigued in Kofi Kingston and Drew McIntyre being the last two people of the Elimination Chamber. You know what I mean? Like, that would be a really interesting type of feel to it, because it would kind of spark the Kofi Kingston type of feel again if somehow he was able to make it and draw his way to Drew, and Drew at the last minute catch him in the Claymore. I wouldn't want to necessarily see a back and forth between the two just because they're both baby faces. But if Drew just kind of catch him in a Claymore at the end or something like that. But at least it would have give the feel of Elimination Chamber would be much better with Kofi Kingston in there as opposed to Jeff Hardy, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, no disrespect to Jeff Hardy, but to me, there's nothing that Jeff Hardy has done resume-wise, including losing on Raw cleanly. He tapped out tonight. Like, there's nothing that he's done to earn a title match.
And they're going to book him to have like two pinfalls in the chamber, just to kind of like, oh, Hardy can do it. Look, he's a legend and he's great and everything, but just he's not winning that match. And let's be honest, Drew's not losing that match.
No.
And that's if that's the feeling going into it, why are we even doing it?
Yeah. Ryan said that the Shane McMahon segment was like wearing underwear. Nice. Regis say you need to get a few bros in for Vince.
All right, bro. All right, I can do that.
bro, seat, bro. Next we have Riddle versus we had backstage we had Shane McMahon and Drew McIntyre. Again, I just Vince usually is the backstage police, because I tell him, like, dude, I've gotten to the point where I don't even pay attention to the backstage segment as much anymore because they're just a stretch. It just stretches the show, and a lot of them are just pointless. It doesn't make any sense to me. This one I did catch was the conversation between Shane McMahon and Drew McIntyre. I mean, that's
I'll be honest. I once I saw Shane back there, I kind of blanked out a little bit just because. You remember when Shane came back a few years ago and it was a really big moment?
Yeah,
everyone went crazy. Oh, here comes the money. It was great, and it didn't take long for that to wear thin.
No,
and it is not. They've not fixed that since.
Yeah,
Raw Underground was not exactly great television, and then we got to this, and I don't really want to see Shane interact with anybody on Raw right now.
Yeah,
it's just not entertaining TV.
And I'm a Shane guy. I love Shane McMahon, and it's always good to see just the entrance, the skipping, all of that. But to me, it was just like, I mean, what are you trying to do here? Like, what do you like with Shane McMahon being there? That did absolutely nothing to make that segment better. It was absolutely ridiculous. First of all, he doesn't explain where Raw Underground is, where it's been hiding. And, we don't have any Raw Underground people anymore, like Arturo Ruas, who was supposed to be on Raw, but then they just kind of quietly made him an NXT jobber again. And so it's like all of these all of these last minute changes. Again, I say, if as a fan, if I keep getting these last minute changes, that takes me out of the product, because you're like, this person's getting drafted here, we're having Raw Underground here, and then this person's going to be here. And then all of a sudden, all these last minute changes, Jey Uso was supposed to be at the Rumble, and Carlito was supposed to be on the Raw Legends show and all that. And it's like all these advertisements that doesn't really last. And it's like, man, that's just another reason why it's difficult for the casual fan to really stay with the product, and even the non-casual fan to say, oh my goodness, here we go again with another, empty promised Raw.
Yeah, it's hard, like you said, when it's an empty promise and things aren't going to go the way they say. But also, when you bring somebody in just to, like, there's no you're not getting a Shane McMahon pop tonight. You know what I mean? Like, there's no actual live crowd.
Exactly.
If that was the case, I would kind of understand it.
Mm-hmm.
But he added nothing.
Zero
to any segment he was on tonight.
Zero. And again, I was like, okay, so you brought Shane McMahon in here without any rhyme or reason to it. I don't know, man. I was thinking in my head, man, we might get the Shane McMahon Adam Pearce match, because I'm thinking in my head, like, Adam Pearce, it's been like 6 years since he's wrestled. He's that indie guy, that NWA ROH guy. He might be itching to get back in the ring for one more round. I would not be surprised if they actually gave Adam Pearce a Mania match, because it's a 2-day event. So they're because of restrictions, they have to have only a certain percent capacity. They're thinking 25 to 30,000, so only about half, a third to half full. And so it's like, look, they're trying to do it the best that they can with 2 nights. Last year they had some throwaway matches, like they put Angel Garza. What was it? They put Austin Theory.
Austin Theory, yeah.
Yeah.
Austin Theory against,
like Street Profits. Yeah. So, and Aleister Black against Lashley, and it was just throwaway matches they put together, and I can see that happening today. I mean, I can see
a match again with like current competitors.
Harold said Jey Uso versus Adam Pearce. I can see that happening too.
That could happen.
Yeah.
Like, even like throwaway matches with current competitors is fine, but like Shane and Adam Pearce.
Yeah.
The more you say it, the more I'm like, it's going to
happen. It's going to. Mark my word. February the 8th, 2 months before Mania, February the 8th, 2021. Dr. Chris Featherstone says, we will see Shane McMahon versus Scrap Iron Adam Pearce, ladies and gentlemen. So
what happened? We can blame you.
Yes. You can blame me for blaming them.
Okay.
That's going to work. Next, we have AJ Styles against Jeff Hardy. Like we said, I mean, a segment before, 2 segments before, and if you want to count the backstage one, you just had them glorify the world champions, former world champions. And then you literally have AJ Styles go against Jeff Hardy, who's lost match after match after match after match after match. Cleanly cause him to tap out. And if anything, I would have made Jeff Hardy at least look good for the next few weeks. I mean, he could have, I'm tired of him beating Elias. He could have beat someone worthwhile. I mean, Mustafa Ali, I think that would have been a good match. You really haven't really seen Hardy versus Ali. I think him being someone like a Mustafa Ali who has some kind of something, although they're still 50-50ing everybody. But even with the Mustafa Ali win, it would make Jeff Hardy at least look like more reputable than he is. I've said this before. The problem is with a lot of WWE, they kind of bank on the legend's namesake, even if they cause him to lose a lot. And that just doesn't fly anymore. You just can't keep banking on the namesake of the legend if they don't look good, with their namesake. It actually brings them down more than elevates anyone who beats them nowadays. And so that's what I see with Jeff Hardy. He's not a credible, unfortunately, his legend, his namesake is just being further and further diluted, and just throwing him in a title match. And even though he's lost to AJ, I think that was just bad booking, having him announced to be a number 1 contender, essentially, but not number 1 out of 5 contender, and then lose cleanly, tap out to AJ Styles the next segment.
Have him beat anyone. I mean, it could be someone that hasn't won a match in a year. Just have him win.
Yeah.
If you have to really sell that these 5 guys are worthy of being in this match. And again, Jeff Hardy's great as a legend, but in the past, year, it's what have you done for me lately? And it's not much.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's I can't believe I'm going into a chamber match this unenthusiastic.
Yeah, it just, hey, we're just gonna come out and here you go. No beat the clock matches they use. I mean, or just the number one, the contenders matches. They could have really circled. I like watching Raws with kind of stipulations, with motives, instead of just throwing matches in there. I would have been much more interested if the matches throughout the night would have been matches for contenders to be in the chamber. That would have been much more interesting to me. You had Mustafa Ali again, who was supposed to be a contender a couple of years ago, so they could have done a thing with him and Kofi tonight to see who gets in there. I would have had Kofi win. You could have had, Sheamus versus, Riddle, you know what I mean, or something like that. You could have had people be a part of the as far as Raw. You could have had contenders, but you just throwing it out there. You start the show with that. What am I looking forward to? I mean, I'm looking forward to another Drew versus Orton match at the main event. The end of the night. Like I've been there, done that. So there wasn't nothing really to look forward to throughout the show.
Yeah, I saw Drew throw out a tweet that said Drew and Randy Orton for the first time this year. Like he was, right. Even he's like,
yeah,
we've done this a lot.
Right.
Even like you were saying before, how they kind of bank on legends' names. They're even banking on like they used to be world champions. They used to be a big deal,
right?
Whereas you could go with these are the new stars of the era of this generation, and they just keep choosing to not go that direction.
Yeah,
it's not working out for them.
Still, yeah, and that's a good point. They still aren't making the decision to build new stars. Like I would have been to me. First of all, I wouldn't have done it. I would if I would have done a chamber match, it would have been a number one contenders match. If we already know it's going to be Edge versus Roman, I wouldn't drag. I mean, I'm okay with causing some type of intrigue throughout the weeks, but at the same time, I wouldn't have made this until Edge made his decision at the with Roman, and I would have made the chamber match a number one contenders match. I would be much more intrigued for the chamber to be a number one contenders match, because I would legitimately wonder who's going to face Drew at Mania. You know what I mean? As opposed to Drew's in the match. Now it's predictable. It's like, okay, well now, yeah, Drew's going to win the match, and I can't think of anybody in that match that would beat Drew. Just, and you'll probably, even if that happens somehow, Drew will win the title back at Mania, and he just did a flip-flop with Orton, just a few months ago, and it's like, you don't want all that flip-flopping. That lack of consistency just loses stock and interest in a champion. And if you have someone beat him just to lose at Mania, that wouldn't be good. And so again, it causes the match to be predictable. At least there would be some element of surprise if the match was a number one contenders match, and I would have people like Kofi, like I said, Keith Lee. I'm even okay with Sheamus on there. Damian Priest would be cool. You know what I mean? Like those names. It doesn't have to be all four champions. I'd definitely be cool with AJ in there. So you would have 6 legitimate contenders to be champion. And to be honest with you, even if an AJ wins, and goes against Drew at Mania, at least, that match would be a little bit more predictable. But at the same time, you still have a heel that will put together a really good show, against Drew at Mania. I'd be even cool if AJ won the chamber if it was a number one contenders match. But since it's not, Drew's going to win.
Yeah, I mean, and they said, Omos can get into the match. No, he can't. Not really. I mean, not without really stretching the limits. Can he get involved in this match?
Yeah.
Unless Brock Lesnar comes back, I don't know who really fights Drew. Barely anyone in that chamber match I want to see fight Drew at Mania. The last time I was on here, I said Sheamus and Drew would be fun, and it's going to be fun.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a Mania match.
No.
And that's the problem. Is like, where's this go?
Yeah.
You know?
And I can see that happening too, man. I really can see after all the 50-50 booking they've been doing with Sheamus, I can see them do Sheamus and Drew at Mania, and I have zero intrigue. Sheamus is kind of like the Miz to me. It's like you were in that title spot, you know, and you were like a upper mid carder, like you in the main event of a big pay-per-view. To me, it automatically just turns my interest the other way. You know what I mean? Like Sheamus to me being booked in a WrestleMania WWE Championship match against Drew McIntyre. I'm just not interested. It's just one of those things. Now I don't know if they're having a March pay-per-view. They usually do the fast lane in between the two, in between Chamber and Mania. If they do that, they'll probably fit it in there. But still, Drew winning the Chamber and then he going against Sheamus, who was in the Chamber, who he beat. It just doesn't seem like. It seems like they're trying to hotshot this decision for one, and for two, they're not confident enough in their booking to allow Drew to just not have a match or not have a really huge match until Mania. He didn't have to have a pay-per-view match.
No, he didn't. And I think you always hear that like Vince is ripping up scripts or whatever. I don't even know if he's done that recently, but you can tell Raw is just every week, last minute, let's do something.
Oh yeah,
and we'll get to it. And it's amazing that this is the same company that has NXT and SmackDown, because there's just no semblance of cohesive and consistent storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we're stuck here with this whole: what is happening with the championship? Why are we having this match?
Yeah.
I don't know, man. It's very disappointing.
Yeah, absolutely. Donald brings up a good point. Could this be a way to finish his match contract? Yeah, I've thought about that too. It really seems as if it is, because they've booked him so poorly. And again, I've said this before, it's like one of those things that it's just kind of petty, you know, to just bury someone on their way out, you know, and it's like, for someone who's put butts in seats for so long, like a Jeff Hardy, you know, left, you know, came back, one of the biggest pops in WrestleMania history, you know, dare I say WWE history. I was actually there in Orlando. So I felt the whole thing, you know, when Hardy came out, I was there inside the stadium, and that pop was it fits the hype. It was as loud on television. It was as loud live, that feeling, just as much as it was on television. Yeah, Harold. Yeah, that's right. First one under the Peacock. So yeah, it will be March. I think it's like March the 18th or something like that. Yeah. So it's like, yeah. So it is the fast lane. So we'll probably have Drew at Chamber and then Drew again at fast lane. So.
And the first pay-per-view you have on Peacock is going to be Drew and Sheamus, probably.
Drew and Sheamus.
That is not.
Yeah.
Not a great first one.
Welcome to Peacock. Drew McIntyre versus Sheamus. This is what we got for you, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, that's appealing.
Maybe we can get Xavier Woods and Reckoning there finally.
What's that again?
Maybe we can get Xavier Woods and Reckoning there.
There you go. Finally, Xavier Woods versus Reckoning. He asked for Reckoning a lot tonight. And speaking of that, New Day beats Retribution, and you know, Xavier Woods kept talking about Reckoning. I don't know, man. It just seems like, and people keep saying, you know, the end the split. You know what I mean? I just cannot wrap my head around ending the split. Like, to me, it just seems like there's just so many people being underutilized now. Just imagine if the split ends and what we see now with the New Day and Retribution. Oh man, they can't even make the tag team division look good now. Just imagine the split ending, and then people like the New Day, you know, going further and further down the pecking order, and then Retribution doing 50-50. This feud to me, it just, unfortunately, what Retribution puts their hands on nowadays, it just turns to a pillar of salt, man, because it's like, I mean, Ricochet, and then they was messing with Hardy for a little bit, and then
it's all a Hurt Business for some reason.
Yeah, the Hurt Business, even the Hurt Business, that it took the excitement away and took the dominance away from the Hurt Business. Now it was a Ricochet week after week after week, and then, hey, this week if you lose against me, you have to join Retribution. Oh, you lost to me. Oh, but yeah, that never happened. You never joined Retribution. And then now it's Xavier Woods week after week, and now Kofi's back, and instead of the Kofi, you took my spot, it's just a New Day versus Retribution, and then New Day wins, and that's what you get.
And that's what sucks, because like the whole Ali Kofi story, it is there, and it's really interesting. And like Ali on Twitter is so much more entertaining than he is on Raw.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like two different people.
Yeah.
Retribution and Ali, a lot of potential, but they just have not been able to figure it out. And if the Hurt Business and the New Day can't get me to care about something,
right?
It's
uncareable.
Like, there's nothing else you can do.
Right. Yeah. And I've said this before, Ali being the heel role and turning heel, at least he gets more exposure. At least it's better than just the kind of run-of-the-mill type of, Sub-Zero Ali that we've been having over the past few years. Good talent, but he really didn't have a character really back him that well. And so at least there's something different there. But I also have said that I think it would have been better if he would have been like the Evil Uno, setting up Brody. You know what I mean? Like, he's a spokesperson, and for a while he's kind of like the leader role, kind of forecasting the kind of like the grand leader. And that's how Evil Uno was with the Dark Order. He was more of the spokesperson. He took a leadership role for a little bit. And then he started to like kind of forecast the big leader coming, which was Brody. And so I think that would have been better with Retribution for Mustafa Ali to kind of be that leader role, that spokesperson role, but ultimately build us up to a more intriguing, a bigger name. Because Mustafa Ali, although he's good to be in that group, just him being the leader, it doesn't scream main event to me whatsoever.
And again, maybe if they booked him better, maybe by now it would be okay. Maybe, but just looking at how they've handled it, it's such a waste of talent.
Yeah.
I mean, the majority of that group are all could be great mid-carders right now.
Yep. Yeah.
And building up, and it's a waste, and that's Raw most of the time. That everything's a bit of a waste. But really, I'm an Ali fan. I love 205 Live, especially when he was on it, and I really thought he had some fantastic storylines and matches, but no one watched 205 Live. So we get to hear
exactly
like I was one of their 12 viewers.
Right.
So we get to hear, and no one really knows anything about him except that he got punked up by Randy Orton a few years ago, and he lost his title opportunity, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not enough to go off of to be a main event story.
It's not. And you're also using talent like Dijak and Dio Matin, who tons of potential. I mean, we saw the face-off with Dio and Dio and Brock Lesnar a couple years back, 2-3 years ago. And Dio Matin's he's a stud, man. He's huge. He's deceptively huge. I've actually seen him in a live event before. I do coverage every time, it lands here in Ohio. And Man, I saw him. He actually went against Dexter Loomis, and he actually jobbed out to Dexter Loomis, unfortunately. But I wanted him to win. But that dude is huge, man, and came from Booker's school and things like that. And he's got some pedigree behind him as far as just being trained by Booker T. So he has, and they pulled him up as an announcer out of anything. You know what I mean? Like as a color commentator, that was a weird deal, but he actually didn't do too bad. And so he's got some backing, you know what I mean? But at the same time, it's like out of anything, now he's got some type of weird type of garb. He's supposed to have be retribution because he wasn't, utilized and all this. And retribution is basically DOA at this point. I think it's about time for a huge overhaul. And at least Shane Thorne is getting some type of love. You know what I mean? If it wasn't for retribution, Shane Thorne would be either released or somewhere buried in NXT somewhere. So at least he's getting some raw exposure from this. But when it comes to Dio Madden and Dijak, I think they're being grossly underutilized.
Of course, yeah. And Shane Thorne, I guess before this he was with Brendan Vink, I think.
Yep, with Vink, yep.
Brendan Vink. They went up to Raw for a week and then they just got rid of him.
Yeah.
That was weird. Like it's another part of those, like they bring you in and nothing to do, bring you back down. But yeah, Dijak and Dio Madden, I mean, there's a lot there. And Dijak had some phenomenal matches with Keith. Like,
yes. Yeah.
Like if you just watch NXT, you saw what Dijak could do.
Mm-hmm.
It was enough. You don't have to see his whole integrator to get it.
Yeah. And even before that, ROH, I've interviewed Keith Lee before, and he said that Dijak's his favorite opponent. He loves working with him. I've interviewed Dijak before too, and he said the same thing. So yeah, they love competing against each other, and he's got so much potential. But I kept saying this before he got into the main roster. I said he needs to gain about 30 pounds because he was just too skinny to be too tall. He needed some meat on him, to make a better presence. So I'm glad he did that. He's definitely gained a lot of weight, in a good way. But he looks like an intimidating factor now, but just the way that he's being booked is just so awful, man.
It's criminal. It is. Like the sooner they get him away from that group, the better he'll be.
Yes.
But Dio Madden, I don't know if they're going to do anything with him or not after the group. I feel like he'll just go back to training. Maybe he'll do commentary again, but they clearly don't know what to do with him.
Yeah.
Mia Yim will be okay, probably.
Yeah.
This is just such a waste of not just their time, but the fans' time as well.
Oh, yeah. 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 You came in with just wreaking havoc on Raw and SmackDown. You're sawing off ring ropes. You're busting through windows, office windows. You're beating up talent. Oh, we're just going to sign you a contract because you're spending so much money vandalizing our product, vandalizing our offices and our ring. Yeah, we'll just sign you a contract and bring your own Raw, have you come backstage with everybody else and say hello and just come out and say, hey, well, there you go. We're going to sign Retribution. That didn't make sense. And that was just, and then the setup to it, like the payoff. And I kept saying this every single week. I said, if the name isn't big enough, I'm telling you, if the name is not big enough, this will be DOA. And that's where we're at. I mean, the payoff, they set this up every week. You had people, they were wearing masks, they were wearing hoods, you had promos, you had silhouettes, you had all these things. And then the payoff of this is Mustafa Ali. And the way that they did it was just weird because he was kind of like, oh, no, Retribution. Oh, yeah, get him, Retribution. It's like,
I think it needs to be one more NXT call up. Like personally, I would have liked it to be Ciampa. I think he would have been a great leader.
Yeah.
And that kind of fits him a little bit. He's just psychotic. So it would have been it would have been better than this.
Yeah, I agree. Ciampa would have been a much better option than Ali, but I still think it should have been a main event, girthy. I mean, like just a big name. And people were saying Orton. I'm like, no, I don't think Orton would have worked. I mean, of course, Punk would have worked if they would have done something like that. But still, I still think it would have been, even with Punk, I still think it would have been just an odd way to bring him back. You know what I mean? People were saying Reigns. I was like, nah, still with Reigns. And you still kind of want him to be solo, you know.
And then we wouldn't have got the Tribal Chief, which had been a real missed opportunity.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Akram is saying Corbin. See, the thing is with Corbin, I still don't think Corbin would have worked because he didn't fit the anarchy type of feel. He did years ago, you know, but he still has that lone wolf type of thing. You know what I mean? So I don't know if that would, and plus his name isn't big enough to be a payoff. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I mean, to me, I think I've mentioned this before, man. The only way it would have worked to me if it would have been like a Cena or something like that, you know what I'm saying? Just to say, man, I'm just going to, why not? You know, I'm here. This is my only chance to turn heel again. It's been, you know, over 15 years since I've been a heel. So why not? You know, why not do it right now? Why not pull a Hogan and do it?
I think the problem,
the latter part of my career.
I think this kind of proves the issue with it is that we've been trying to find a name for it for how many minutes, and we can't find one that really makes sense in any way.
Yeah.
Like it was, I think it was destined to fail.
Yeah.
And that's, I forgot about the whole chainsaw thing too. That was a blast from the past. But there was really nobody to fit the mold.
No.
Which is why I guess they got Ali, because Ali was doing nothing.
Yeah.
But we've seen how it worked out.
And Ali fits the mold, but his namesake it just isn't like I said. If he drew someone, you know, maybe a Bo Dallas or something like that, just kind of repackaged him or something like that completely, something that causes some. But still, even with him, I don't think his name was main event enough. I mean, Brody to me was the perfect person for Dark Order because his name was big enough to be a leader. He looked the part. He looked intimidating, you know what I mean? And he looked like he could just beat all of them together. And so he fit the role of being the leader that someone is following. Ali doesn't look like he can beat Dio Madden or Dijak, you know what I mean? And so he didn't really like he can be either one of them, or it was Shane Thorne either, or Mia Yim, you know. So it's like, you know, and I know that he was a former police officer, so I'm sure that he's, you know, he can take some people, but he doesn't look the part, you know what I mean? And so I just didn't think it worked out, and I really don't think there's anybody you can think of right now that really could fit the mold.
If I could do, you know, go through contracts and whatnot and kind of pull somebody out, it would be Sami Callihan, but that's a whole different discussion. But you have to go out of the company to find someone.
Yeah, exactly.
Again, like it just doesn't. You didn't build it for someone. You built it for
you know who could have worked would be Karrion Kross. I think Karrion Kross would have been a good idea if with the chaotic type of feel to him, but not more like anarchy. It would be more like a, you know, I'm the ringleader of these, you know, misfits type of thing. You don't have to do the mask and the paint and all that. You could just have some people just kind of coming behind him and kind of being like brainwashed, you know what I mean, by him, because he has that type of brainwashy type of feel to him. And instead of having the retribution type of thing, if you're just trying to bring people on the roster, on the main roster, you could have had like a brainwashy type of like a following with him. But other than that, but still, from the retribution standpoint, I think maybe an Aleister Black could have worked. You know what I mean? If you could have had a retribution, but still, whatever name I'll throw out there is still like, maybe, but still, there's still something there that's missing, So,
I mean, again, it goes back to I think booking. Whereas if Aleister Black was booked better in the past 2 years, maybe he would have been good for that spot. That's the problem with the whole 50-50 on and off again issue. Is when something like this happens and comes up, you don't have anybody ready for it.
Yep, absolutely. Next we get Ric Flair, Lacey Evans in-ring promo gets interrupted by Charlotte Flair. This leads to Lacey. First of all, Ric Flair, has got some type of drip garb going on, and he's trying to cut. Ric Flair's he's the GOAT to many, and it would be hard to argue otherwise. But God bless him, man, because it's just like he just feels so out of place in this feud to me, and it's just like Lacey Evans to me is just not the right person to really fit the dirtiest woman in the game type of fold. And I was looking at this, and Vince and I have talked about this before. It's like in this whole feud, like Charlotte looks like the heel. Like she seems like the heel. You're basically emasculating your father. You're abandoning your father. Your father chooses to align with somebody else because you just dress him down every time you see him and saying, "Go away, I don't need you." So he's with Lacey now, and you basically continue to put your father down, and like you're cutting promos that is very heelish, and then on it was the DQ thing, and then even she looked like a heel tonight, and she's having referees still having helping her with the ring ropes. That's very heelish, that's very pompous. And so Charlotte Flair does not look like the babyface in all this.
No, and also you're coming off of Lacey Evans, who last year they're talking about how great she was as a military service.
Yes.
They did the whole Saudi Arabia thing with Natalya, and then she turned heel because she didn't win karaoke.
Yes.
And then we get to this. Did you see the Raw Talk segment with Rick and Lacey? I think it was last week, where he said he's gonna be in the Hall of Fame 3 times for himself, for the 4 Horsemen, and then when Randy retires, he'll be in there for Evolution.
Mm-hmm.
He wants one more ring,
and
that ring will be him being the manager of a future world champion. Now, whether that's good or not, it's subjective. I'm sure people will love it or hate it, but at least that is a story. Like, it's not great, but it's Raw. I don't know what the story is on Raw. I don't know what it's supposed to be, but at least with that, you kind of have, he wants to manage someone to be a champ. Okay, sure. But like, at least give us that on TV. Even though it's not a great story, at least give it to us. I don't have to go search Twitter or the network to find this.
Right, exactly. Like, what is this story? Check out Raw Talk on the network. That's what you have to do nowadays.
I'm not going to Raw Talk for Lacey Evans and Ric Flair.
Right, exactly. Edge cuts an in-ring promo, gets interrupted by Miz Morrison and Garza. This leads to Damian Priest against Garza. Edge is, doing his teasing again. So, Garza, spent all this time. I mean, I like Damian Priest being there, but you spent all this time giving vignettes to Garza just for him to look like an idiot again. I mean, I knew this was going to happen. I called this from weeks ago that this angle, this Garza gimmick, has a very short shelf life. It will fade out and expire very soon. And this is exactly what happened.
I've heard you and Vince talk about this before about it's hard to get any kind of investment in someone when you get these vignettes and like there's a repackaging or a debut, because then every time, especially on Monday nights, this happens.
Yep.
It's comical. It really is. Like, who was what was it supposed to be, a new valet form that he was giving the rose to, or is it just like giving it to the fans? It was never explained.
Mm-hmm.
And then he just loses tonight for no reason.
He should come out with Alicia Fox. I mean, he tried to give a rose to Alicia Fox. Might as well just
around.
Alicia Fox.
She's around. I'm not.
Yeah. Keith Lee, what was that?
Just do something. Do something.
Anything. I agree. Keith Lee and Riddle was a good match. Lashley attacks them both match, and I'm going to put this over. We Vince and I, we roast Raw every week, and people love it. But like I said, I try to find anything that I like about Raw, and that's the one. I like two things about Raw. One, we haven't talked about yet, but the other was Keith Lee. Not necessarily Keith Lee beating Riddle, that was a solid match. But I said this previous weeks, I love what they're doing with Lashley now. They're making him an absolute monster. And that's how you book heels. You can't do this 50-50 crap, especially with someone like a Lashley. Come on now. And then on top of that, he's looking like you're just absolute scared crapless, to get to him when you look at him like, oh my gosh, like he can just plow through anybody, backstage. And I'm so glad that they're finally doing that to a heel. They're really making Lashley look good finally, for that person who beat him to get that heat, to transfer that heat and get that pop. Finally, they're doing that to him. Now they have to build up the babyface good enough to make the win look better.
Yeah, it took them a few years, but they finally figured out how to book Lashley. I mean, yeah, he's a giant killer. He's the Dominator. And with MVP at his side, like it's a great combination. And just to see them finally go for it is great.
Yep.
I guess it's going to be Keith.
Yeah, most likely.
Which would be fun. It'd be a fun match.
Yeah.
But this is the Lashley that I want to see fight for a world title.
Yes, 100%. I've said that so many times.
Because they had a great match last year.
Yeah.
I could see him winning the world title this year. I'd be fine.
I've said that week after week after week. I would have been much more interested in Lashley winning the Royal Rumble and going against Drew. I'm not a big fan of heels chasing, on to Mania. But even if you have a babyface win and go for Reigns, at least somehow get Lashley in the mix, slip on the banana peel, get the U.S. title off of him with help with unintentional, distraction from the Hurt Business or something like that. Get him off, get that title off him. He gets upset that he does it. He plows through everybody. He goes to Drew and he beats Drew. I'd be much more okay with that. And then lastly, keeping the belt until SummerSlam and then Drew regaining it. 4-month reign, a solid 4-month reign. Sure. Why not? Continuing to be a dominant heel and building up that, that dominance as a heel. I would have been totally fine with it if they would have done that. But it doesn't seem like that's where they're going to go. They're going to keep him the U.S. title.
Unfortunately. He's been a great champion. It's been fine, but it's just he is one of the few legitimate superstars on Raw.
Yeah.
He walks out and you're like, that.
Mm-hmm.
That's a wrestler.
Yep. But missed opportunity once again. We get Lana defeating Nia Jax in a tables match. I think out of all the tables spots, they said, okay, well, we'll just end this whole thing, 9 weeks of tables, and then we'll just have Lana push Nia Jax through a table. And then this leads to Naomi defeating Shayna Baszler for as much as Shayna. And this is the second thing I like because I like Naomi. I'm glad I didn't have her lose. So I'm glad that happened. That was another thing that was good, happy about. But as much as they pushed Nia Jax and Shayna to be the dominant heels, they surely didn't look like it this week.
They doing a lot. I mean, like in matches, they lose a lot. I'm a big Shayna fan, but Naomi getting a win here is nice. Nia falling on the apron and then whatever she screamed,
yeah,
did not help.
Something hole or something like that.
My hole, my butt.
Yeah.
It wasn't good.
Yeah, nice saying my hole.
My hole.
Well, she really supposed to say that. Wow, yeah.
I can't imagine she was, but whoever, if that was a line she was given, give that writer a raise.
Yeah.
It's so bad, it's good.
It's just getting pathetic for me. It's just difficult to see this whole thing. I hope this ends this feud.
4-month feud, 5-month feud.
Yeah. Well, 2 months, nearly 2.5 months was just her going through tables. Lana of the feud, and then she was out for about a month. They just replaced Charlotte with Asuka, and then now she was Asuka's partner, and then now Naomi's her partner when that came out of nowhere, and that's a bad spot for me. Naomi should be booked to the moon. She should be pushed to the moon on Raw. To me, she has the whole package. They're misusing her very much. Lastly, we get Drew McIntyre against Randy Orton. This ends with Sheamus accidentally broke kicking Orton. Orton's just, the past couple of weeks, he's just being a part of, screwy finishes. First it was Edge, now it's with Drew McIntyre. So that's the main event, ladies and gentlemen.
Went from the most despicable heel in the company in years.
Yeah.
And then in a few short months, just gone.
Yeah.
Completely gone.
Yep. That's WWE booking, ladies and gentlemen. You can't even book the legend killer, a bona fide Hall of Famer. Like, you can't even be consistent with him. Actually, last year was one of his best years in a number of years, and still couldn't follow through with that. All right, Greg, let them know where to find you, my man.
You can find me at Greg Bush SK on Twitter. You can also find me on Facebook, facebook.com/Under the Ring Pod, or the Under the Ring Podcast. We do every Thursday on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. And that's about it for now.
Nice. Good stuff, man. Always a pleasure talking Raw with you, man. It's been fun.
Yeah, man. Happy to do it anytime.
Awesome. He's Greg Bush. I'm Dr. Chris Featherstone. This is another episode of Leads in a Raw. Have a good night, everybody. So long.